storm. For Will Spencer and Electra Forrester, what was supposed to be the start of their most beautiful chapter, the confirmation that they were expecting a child, became the beginning of their quiet undoing. They had fought so hard to reach this fragile peace, clawing their way through scandal, betrayal, and the bruising glare of public opinion. In their hands, hope had finally taken shape in the form of a growing heartbeat inside Electra's body. But the universe, or perhaps fate, had a cruel sense of irony. One medical error, one test marred by contamination or carelessness, stripped them of certainty. The results from the prenatal screening suggested an impossibility that the child might not be Will's. It wasn't conclusive, only ambiguous, yet ambiguity was enough to destroy everything they had built. At first, they clung to denial. Electra, pale and trembling, repeated the same words, that the test must have been wrong, that it didn't mean what it seemed. Will wanted to believe her. He wanted to trust the woman who had stood beside him when the world turned against him. But beneath the surface of his composure, something darker stirred. The old insecurities, the shadows of his past, the memory of betrayal from those who once swore love. The uncertainty ate at him like acid. Every small silence, every flicker in Electra's eyes, began to look like deceit. The doctors, clinical and detached, explained that the DNA results were inconclusive, that further testing could clarify the truth. Yet, the word inconclusive became a curse. It dangled between them like a blade, sharp, invisible, and merciless. Will found himself pacing the halls at night, his mind replaying every moment of the past months. The late meetings Electra claimed were with the Forrester design team. The mysterious messages she dismissed as work-related. The faint scent of cologne that wasn't his. Each fragment became evidence, each coincidence a possible betrayal. Electra, meanwhile, was trapped in a different kind of torment. She watched the man she loved crumble beneath suspicion, his warmth turning cold, his words clipped and distant. She tried to explain, to reach for his hand, to remind him of their shared history, of the love that had survived humiliation, media attacks, and the weight of their powerful family's expectations. But Will's trust, once fractured, was not easily repaired. She found herself defending against crimes she hadn't committed, her voice cracking as she pleaded for belief. Her pregnancy, which should have been a symbol of unity, became a battlefield. Every checkup, every heartbeat, felt like a trial she had to pass to prove her innocence. Outside their home, whispers began to spread. The Spencer name carried both privilege and peril. Secrets rarely stayed secret for long. When word reached the family that something was off about the baby's paternity, speculation ignited like wildfire. Bill Spencer, pragmatic and merciless, called for discretion, but beneath his stoic facade, disappointment simmered. To him, lineage was everything. A Spencer heir must be a Spencer in blood. He didn't say it outright, but his silence was punishment enough. Katie, torn between maternal instinct and moral conscience, tried to shield her son from the storm, but she too began to wonder what had really happened. The pressure from both families became unbearable. The Forresters wanted answers to protect their image. The Spencers demanded them to protect their legacy. For Will and Electra, privacy ceased to exist. The media circled like vultures, spinning rumors of infidelity and deceit. Some claimed Electra had an affair with a high-profile client. Others whispered that the child might belong to someone connected to the Forrester empire, a scandal that could fracture two dynasties at once. Underneath the chaos, a more insidious truth began to unfold. The accident that led to the inconclusive test wasn't entirely accidental. The lab technician responsible had vanished, his records erased. Someone had tampered with the results, but who and why? As Will began to dig deeper, he discovered that both his and Electra's medical files had been accessed by an unknown party. It wasn't merely about doubt. It was about manipulation. Someone wanted them to destroy each other. Yet, instead of uniting against a common enemy, Will and Electra turned inward, tearing at the fabric of their love. Will's obsession with uncovering the truth consumed him. He hired private investigators, demanded surveillance reports, interrogated everyone in Electra's orbit. What began as a quest for clarity turned into paranoia. Every friend became a suspect, every memory tainted. He was haunted not only by the possibility of betrayal, but by his own capacity for mistrust. He loved Electra, but he also feared her, feared what she could have done, or what she might still be hiding. Electra, crushed under scrutiny, began to retreat emotionally. She stopped attending family events, stopped answering calls from her colleagues. The woman who once radiated quiet strength now seemed like a ghost of herself. Even her reflections in mirrors felt foreign. The eyes staring back were tired, hollow, uncertain of who she was anymore. She told herself she loved Will, that her silence was for protection, not guilt. But inside her, resentment bloomed. Why did love always demand proof? Why did forgiveness feel like a transaction she couldn't afford? Their home, once a sanctuary, became a prison of half-spoken words and unshared fears. Nights stretched long and sleepless. Will often sat alone in the nursery, staring at the empty crib, trying to picture a future he could no longer believe in. Electra would linger in the doorway, wanting to comfort him but too afraid her presence would only deepen his pain. Sometimes she'd whisper, "We'll get through this," but the words hung lifeless in the air. The turning point came when a private investigator uncovered footage, grainy security camera recordings showing Electra meeting with a man outside a medical building weeks before the test results. The clip was ambiguous, the man's face obscured, but the image was enough to reignite Will's fury. He confronted her, shaking, voice breaking, demanding answers. Electra denied any affair, explaining that the man was a genetic counselor she had consulted for a prenatal complication she hadn't wanted to worry him about. But by then, logic had no place in their marriage. Will saw only betrayal, Electra saw only condemnation. Meanwhile, both of them became targets of an external investigation. Corporate insiders had noticed irregularities in the financial records of a foundation tied to the Spencer and Forrester families, the same account that had funded the prenatal care. Authorities suspected embezzlement, medical fraud, and falsified data. The supposed accident at the lab now appeared as part of a larger conspiracy, possibly linked to competitors trying to destabilize both families. But to the public eye, it looked like Will and Electra were at the center of corruption. Their reputations crumbled further, leaving them isolated. Will's world, once structured and certain, began to implode. He was no longer seen as the future of the Spencer empire, but as a liability. Bill started hinting at removing him from major projects, placing Liam in charge instead. The humiliation was unbearable. Every boardroom glance, every whispered conversation, confirmed what he feared. He was being replaced. And all because of a child whose existence had become a riddle. Electra, desperate to save what remained of their relationship, agreed to another test, this time under strict security. But even as she did, she knew it might not matter. The damage had already been done. When love becomes evidence, no truth can repair it. The results, when they finally arrived, were again inconclusive. The doctor explained that technical limitations prevented certainty. The baby's DNA carried anomalies possibly caused by the stress of prior medical interventions. Science had no answer. The emotional fallout was devastating. Will broke down, unable to distinguish between reality and fear. He accused Electra of manipulating the system, of orchestrating the confusion to protect herself. Electra, shattered, packed a bag and left their home, moving temporarily into Steffi's guest house. But distance didn't bring clarity. Instead, it made Will realize how much he needed her, not because of the baby, but because she was the only anchor that kept him from falling apart completely. In his solitude, Will confronted the mirror again, that same mirror he had avoided for months. What he saw wasn't a betrayed husband or a victim of conspiracy. He saw a man who had destroyed his own peace in the pursuit of certainty. His need to know had become a form of self-torture. The truth, he realized, was not a single fact but a choice. To believe or not to believe. love, in its truest form, required faith, the one thing he had lost. Electra, too, faced her reckoning. Alone in the quiet of Steffi's home, she felt the baby move for the first time. The sensation was both joy and sorrow, a reminder that life continued even in ruin. She thought of Will, of their laughter before the storm, of the man who once held her as if nothing could harm them. She wrote him a letter, not to beg forgiveness, but to tell him that she still believed in what they once were. That no test, no rumor could define their love unless they allowed it to. Weeks later, Will showed up at her door, exhausted, eyes hollow, hands trembling. There were no accusations left, no words sharp enough to wound. He simply asked to feel the baby kick. As his palm rested against her stomach, the child stirred, fragile yet alive. For a moment, time stilled. The question of paternity, that cruel, endless question, faded. What remained was something purer. Two people broken by doubt, but still connected by something they couldn't name. Yet, peace in their world never lasted long. The investigator Will had hired called again, claiming new information about the man in the footage. He wasn't a genetic counselor at all. He was a whistleblower tied to the lab's internal fraud. And he had recently gone missing. The implication was chilling. Someone powerful had orchestrated everything, the tests, the leaks, the rumors, to dismantle the Spencer-Forrester alliance from within. Will now faced another choice: reopen the wounds to seek justice, or finally let go and protect what little remained of his family. In the months that followed, Will chose silence. He resigned from his corporate role, withdrew from the spotlight, and focused on Electra and the baby. But silence is not peace. It is merely the absence of noise. Deep down, he knew that truth, like blood, always finds its way to the surface. And when the baby was finally born, a tiny, perfect child with Electra's eyes and Will's uncertainty, the past no longer mattered. Whether by fate, science, or deception, the child was theirs. Not because of DNA, but because of the love and pain that had bound them. The world outside still whispered, still doubted, but in that quiet hospital room, as the sun filtered through sterile glass, Will and Electra made a silent pact that sometimes the only way to survive the truth is to stop needing to know it. Still, in the back of Will's mind, a question lingered, one he would never ask aloud. If the test had been right all along, if the child was not his, would it change anything? He didn't know. Perhaps that was the final cruelty of love, that even forgiveness carried doubt like a shadow. And somewhere, in the spaces between truth and faith, Will realize that love's greatest test was not fidelity or bloodline, but the ability to hold someone close while still living with the possibility that they could break you again.